Hey guys, so welcome back to my list of top 10 favorite Shakespeare plays. This is going to be number 3, which if you read the title, you know what it is already, Midsummer Night's Dream. So Midsummer Night's Dream was the first Shakespeare play I was ever exposed to. I think I was probably around 5 or 6 years old, and my local community theater was doing a production of Peter and the Wolf, but as the first act they were going to show a couple scenes from Midsummer. I don't think they showed the entire thing, they just showed 2 scenes, I believe. And I actually can remember this. I have one distinct memory of, I'm assuming it must have been the first scene of the play because I'm pretty sure that the girl I'm remembering seeing was Hermia. And yeah, I just remember seeing her kneeling on the stage with some other people around her, presumably Aegeus, Theseus, the other characters who would have been in that scene. And the other memory I have of this production is of the actress who was playing Puck sticking her head out from behind a tree saying, "Follow my voice." So that was my first exposure to it, and then when Megan started studying this in school, I started hearing about it a lot from her. So yeah, Megs, you were actually my first Shakespeare teacher. But there was a number of years in the middle there where I didn't think of this play, I had no exposure to it, nothing. Then when I was 13, I hadn't started high school yet, I was supposed to be starting that fall, at this point it was May. The local public high school, not my school but a different one, did a production of Midsummer Night's Dream, and my family went to go see it. And I had never seen anything like that, at least not in my memory. As previously stated, I had seen it, but didn't remember it very well. And I had no idea that this was a thing that existed. I fell in love with it, basically. I went home and begged my mom to take me to see it again. I was able to go see it the second time the next weekend, and I can still remember that production pretty clearly, actually. I really liked the actress who played Puck and the actor who played Oberon. They both did really, really well in their roles. Everyone was good. But those are the two that stand out in my mind, those and then the actress who played Helena as well. And then over the course of that summer, I read the play thoroughly 3 times, and I also spot read it and researched it like crazy. I spent hours sitting on the computer just Googling Midsummer Night's Dream, things about the different characters, just finding things out. So the play's current point ranking is 28, which is 3 higher than The Tempest at 25, and then 6 higher than Henry IV Part 1. So it is moving up there a little bit, but it's still not by a huge margin. It is the play that has the highest nostalgia factor for me, just because it reaches so far back into my memory, but it is also legitimately one of my favorite plays. I absolutely adore this play. It's probably the most fantastical of Shakespeare's plays, at least in my opinion. Depends on how you define fantastical. Like, something like Cymbeline has some really fantastical elements, and then of course The Tempest is just chock full of fantastical elements. The main character is a magician. That's probably the one I would say that would rival this one, but it depends on how you look at it. So if you're unfamiliar with the plot of A Midsummer Night's Dream, it has 3 or 4 different plot lines all kind of running together. The first one that really serves more as a backdrop than an actual plot line is the marriage of Theseus, the Duke of Athens, to Hippolyta, Queen of the Amazons. That one kind of acts as a little bit of a bookend to the story. You hear about it in the first scene and the last scene. It gets mentioned once or twice throughout, but it's not really a huge player in the events, although it is important for setting the stage of kind of what Athens is like, especially in terms of the women. Depending on how you portray Hippolyta, it can either be that she was won over to Theseus' side because they fought a war against each other, or it can be that she was literally captured and is now his war prisoner that he's forcing to marry him. So yeah, it says a lot about Athens, depending on how you stage that. The second of the 2 plot lines, and this is probably the closest to a central plot line we get, is the relationship between the 4 lovers, Hermia, Lysander, Helena, and Demetrius. These 4, I can't call them a love triangle because there's 4 of them. They kind of form a set of love triangles, a love quadrangle, or whatever you want to call it, a love square. You've got Hermia and Lysander, who are in love with each other. Demetrius is in love with Hermia, although she does not love him. And her father has given Demetrius permission to marry her, not Lysander. And legally speaking, Hermia has to either become a nun, do as her father wants, or die. Those are her options. She does not want to do any of those things, so she and Lysander decide to run away together. And the 4th member of this awkward, not love triangle is Helena. She's in love with Demetrius, and she's Hermia's best friend. Demetrius used to be in love with Helena, but he has since left her for Hermia. And so that's kind of the biggest driving factor of the plot, I would say. They set off a lot of the action, their decisions affect a lot, but they more have things done to them than actually doing things, I would say. They do a lot of things themselves, of course, but for a lot of the play, they act kind of as the puppets of another of the major plot lines, which is the fairies. This is the reason that I love this play so much. I adore fantasy, and I love fairies and fae in particular. And so seeing Shakespeare's portrayal of the fairies is especially interesting. It was, of course, written in a time when fairies were not seen the same way they are now. Shakespeare was one of the early writers to depict fairies as being something other than pure malevolence, basically, or mostly malevolence at least. So the fairies we interact with the most are Oberon and Puck. Oberon is the king of the fairies. Puck is his jester, his court jester. Puck is a male character, but he's often played by women depending on the production. He is also Oberon's gopher. We get the impression that he kind of acts as Oberon's personal agent to do whatever Oberon wants, and he's very, very mischievous. Oberon, the king of the fairies, sorry, you can tell that I'm used to differentiating in that way. The king of the fairies is very much what you would expect from a traditional fairy king of this type. He's very, very imposing and powerful, and he has huge control over the elements. There's actually a very major number of things that have to do with his control over the elements in the backstory of this thing, but he's not, I wouldn't say he's either really good or evil. He's kind of a mix of the two. He, on the one hand, he sets out to help Helena when he sees that she's upset, or when he sees that she's in trouble. So he can have compassion, and he does also seem to have legitimate affection for Puck. He kind of seems to see Puck as like a little puppy almost, but not really. But he also can be very cruel. He plays a very cruel trick on Titania, and he can be quite selfish. And that leads me, of course, to Titania, which is the queen of the fairies. She's Oberon's wife, and like him, she's very much, I would say, true neutral, or chaotic neutral, if you want to go by the categorizations of that method. I think all the fairies would be, really. When we first meet Titania, Titania, I've heard it pronounced both ways, she tends to be, I would say, more loving of the two, at least when we first meet her. She has adopted a child who was orphaned, whose mother was her close friend. But she also shows throughout the story that she can be very capricious and mercurial, and she knows what she wants and she's used to getting it, which is a very, very Fae thing. I would say her and Oberon are very similar in that aspect. So Oberon and Puck spend a large portion of this play basically awkwardly puppet mastering these four lovers and attempting to get them paired off into their, final pairings, but it doesn't go very well due to various misunderstandings that go on with Puck, and it's kind of hysterical but also really sad at certain moments. And then the fourth plot line is the players, or the rude mechanicals as they're called in the play. This group is a group of craftsmen who live in Athens, and they are putting together a play to perform at Theseus's wedding. So they're trying to put this play together, but due to the dynamics of the group, there are some problems. Bottom, which is their leading man, Nick Bottom, he's a weaver, and he thinks he's better than he is, let's just say. Quince, the director of the group, he has a lot of patience for Bottom, or at least he tries to, but you can tell that he's having a hard time because Bottom is constantly going, no, I can just play everyone, and just going, no, Bottom, you can't. I mean, you technically could, but it probably would not go well since Bottom is not a very good actor. And on top of that, Bottom is also rather stupid. Harmlessly stupid, but the point is that the thought of putting their entire hopes onto this man, especially given the fact that if the Duke and Duchess don't like the play, they could literally be executed. I can see why Quince is hesitant. One of my personal favorite instances of humor with the character of Bottom is the way Shakespeare uses wordplay with him. But in the case of Bottom, it's usually accidental wordplay. Like this moment in Act 1, Scene 2, this is the first scene where we see the mechanicals. Bottom is talking about how there's going to be a lion in their play, and he's talking about how the lion is supposed to portray his role. He says, I grant you, friends, if you should fright the ladies out of their wits, they would have no more discretion but to hang us. And then here in the side notes it says, Bottom wants to say no other choice, but his words mean no more sense. And this happens a lot with him, where it's like, whoa, stop, back up, wrong word. And I don't know, I enjoy that a lot. Oh, and by the way, this specific copy of Midsummer Night's Dream, this isn't the exact copy, I guess, but this is the edition that I learned this play off of when I was reading it on my own. This is the copy that I used. It's the Oxford School Shakespeare edition. I think you can find it on Amazon, but I haven't been able to find it anywhere else, which makes me kind of sad because it's really good. It's clearly meant to be used in classrooms. Like if you look in the back, it's got classwork and examinations section. So yeah, definitely meant to be used in classroom, but it is a really good version, and I found it very helpful. So yeah, also it's not super big, so that makes it a lot easier to work with. Yeah, anyway, in conclusion, I do think there's a reason that this play is as popular as it is. This is probably the one I see performed the most, except for maybe something like Romeo and Juliet. This one, I would say it's difficult, it's complex plot-wise because it has like 4 different plots all running, but it's also one of the easier ones to understand, I would say. I think it depends on the person, but for me, I found this one a lot easier to understand in the actual wording when I was 13 than, say, Romeo and Juliet. That one was a little bit more difficult for me to learn. But maybe it was just that I cared more with this one. Especially if you like fantasy, this is a really good one to read. It has really beautiful poetry, the characters are really fun. Puck is amazing. I personally don't like Bottom, but he's a popular character, so depends. And just before I go, I wanted to show you my other copies, because I have 3 copies. I have this one, and then I have this lovely little one right here. This one is the Oxford Shakespeare, like Oxford World of Classics edition. This one has a lot of the more, I guess, in-depth knowledge that I have of Midsummer, so that's where I got that. And my third one is this little guy. This thing is a copyright 1914. I believe I got it actually from Naomi's bookshelf, and it's a little pocket version, just fits in my hand. So yeah, thanks for watching, you guys. If you have any questions or comments, please feel free to put them down below. I'm happy to talk to you guys about this stuff. Have a fantastic day. See you later.